Hey everyone, Mystical Mark here. So in this video, I kind of wanted to go on a different topic. I know I normally do like weekly astrology videos or large event kind of videos, but here I actually want to talk about the astrology of Gen Z. Get into a little bit on generational astrology, what exactly that means, and then take a look at Gen Z's astrology and see how, as a generation, this energy has been conducive to them, how it relates to them in that way, all right? I feel like the vibe that I was getting to create this video and to start this video, it seems very, like it was very positive, very uplifting, very, I don't know, I wanted to say Gen Z. I feel like as we get into the charts and as we'll see, you'll be kind of maybe begin to see exactly what I'm talking about in that sense. All right, before we get into this a bit further though, I do have to do my normal, YouTube creator type things. If you are looking to get a reading with me, you can head on over to my Etsy shop at mysticalmarkastro.etsy.com. The link is in the description if you are on YouTube. It is in my bio if you're watching this on TikTok. If you did want to support me on my Ko-Fi, it's similar to Patreon. Memberships start as low as $1 a month for early access videos. The other tiers offer, weekly live streams like that. All right. And of course, if you do join the Ko-Fi, you do get a special Discord access. Oh my God, the word evades me as to what Discord role. Okay, Discord role, and that you get access to the membership areas. And of course, I will frequently be there more often than into the other areas of Discord. Of course, the Discord is free, but as those are paying members, I will be more in those areas. Like if you have questions, want to talk about certain things, etc., etc. And of course, if you do like this video, please hit that like button, comment, subscribe. If you're on TikTok, hit that follow button. All of those things help the algorithm to, do its algorithm thing. All right, so with that all being said, I think before, again, I jump into the charts to have kind of a look here, I just want to talk about maybe what is generational astrology? Like what does this all mean, the astrology of Gen Z? Like how can you group an entire generation into astrology? Okay, so first off, I want to say a lot of what people know or understand about astrology, whether you see it on TikTok or see it just generally out there, is... The word that I was feeling was bullshit. I think the nice way to say it though is that it's very surface level. It focuses mainly on your sun sign or on your big three. Now, when we have a look at it from that perspective, that is not at all fully what astrology. In fact, that's not really at all what astrology is. All right, it's not just about your sun sign. In fact, I've seen charts where you could have you could be sun in whatever sign. Like let's say I'm sun in Cancer, and you could have like a stellium in your chart, or your chart ruler being like in an intense area where that's very strong chart, and that energy itself is more intense or more expressed within you than, let's say, just your sun sign. So to consider astrology as just your sun sign is honestly just BS to me. And as well as your big three, like, yeah, that's your big three. But sure, where, like your sun. Okay, your sun, but what house is it in? What is it aspecting, right? Same with your moon. What house is it in? What is it aspecting? What is your chart ruler? What sign is your chart ruler in? What is that aspecting? Right? And then your rising sign, well, that's your rising sign, but okay, like again, that signifies also your chart ruler and what I just said about that. So there's a lot more to this, okay? And so with astrology, it's not just your sun sign, it's not just your big three. Then you get into the personal planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, those kinds of things that relate to maybe more of your personality. Mercury, your communication, thoughts, those kinds of things. Venus, material things, relationship. Mars, passion, desire. It can relate to sex as well. All right, so those are kind of your personal planets. Then we get into the outer planets. Those are more of like the purposeful planets. Okay, we're relating to maybe what you came here for. I was hearing almost like your destiny, your destined aspects in a sense, right? So, and I'll talk about destiny in a minute, and we'll get there. And so that's kind of The outer planets are more of like I said, purposeful, but those also relate generationally. So when we look at the outer planets, they're the slower moving planets. So they tend to stay in certain signs in certain areas of the chart for longer periods of time. So which means that souls, or people that are born into certain years or certain groups, I suppose, would have a similar energetic vibe to those planets in those specific signs because they stay there for so long. Excuse me. For those of you who don't know, when I burp or something like that, it usually is an emphasis to something that, yeah, that's what this is. Pay attention to that, right? I do a lot of this. A lot of my astrology is done like intuitively with whatever I get coming through, and like you're going to see when I'm jumping into this, I didn't really do too much research beforehand. I had stuff coming to me, flowing to me about this, but then as we get into the charts and stuff, it's going to be like, I've known a lot of the generational stuff for Gen Z, but especially in my weekly videos, mostly you can see when I just kind of jump in and just go with it. And in a way, when I'm doing this, I'm kind of jumping in and going with it too. As I didn't really look at the charts to prepare for this, I just felt to do this, knew what was coming through, and we're going to do it. So this is very raw, very real. You're seeing what's coming through as it comes through. And of course, stuff that I've gotten before and have known before through doing readings and other things as well. All right, so it's kind of all just bunched together in a video that I hope is very informative to Gen Z, as well as maybe parents of Gen Z or grandparents of Gen Z, anybody who's interested in this. Gen Alpha, if you see this 10 years, 20 years from now, you can see what your Gen Z, I don't know, older cousins or whatever are like. Anyways, but yeah. Okay, is there anything else that I want to say prior to getting into the chart here? One thing I did want to mention, I think on the topic of like destiny and stuff, I do want to say I approach astrology, and where I've been guided to take astrology is understanding that you have free will. A lot of people consider astrology to be like an aspect of fate. However, that fate is something that you have created or manifested upon yourself. Of course, other people's free will manifestations can affect and in some ways interfere with our own. However, that still is an aspect of free will. All right? So the fate is that part of free will. And you're kind of thinking, okay, well, what is this? Certain times you're born and all of that. Well, your higher self, or your non-physical self, your soul, chose to play the character of you in this lifetime. Okay, in order to do that, it's like, okay, I want to be this person, I want to do these kinds of things, I want to manifest these things in my life, do these big things in my life, do all of this. In order to do that kind of thing, you put that out to the universe. That's your desire, your strong desire from that soul perspective, and the universe goes, all right, and does all the calculations. You know, it's like that meme with that woman and all those math calculations are floating in the air, and does all these things, and it's like, boop, you're going to be born at this time, this place, da 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 da, with these parents, and then you can do that, right? So part of what I've been guided is astrology, or when you look at someone's astrology chart, is an energetic template, all right, that is conducive to certain things becoming manifest. Like, you can look at your astrology chart with all the aspects and everything, like playing a song on a piano. Some things are going to be harmonious together, some things are going to be disharmonious together, some things are going to work together, some things are not. However, all that creates that song of you. However, how that song is maybe played, or who's playing it, or what's going on, like, you get my gist. Like, maybe not, that's not the best analogy for that. It's kind of an analogy to what I'm getting at with the fact that the universe operates on frequency and vibration, and that's what I'm getting at with that energetic template. However, how that energy is specifically used for you can differ between certain people, right? So even when we're talking about generational astrology, you could have a strong emphasis on those outer planets in your chart. So what this generational aspect could be stronger in you than maybe it is for some of your other peers, even though you're a part of that same generation as well. All right, so there's a lot more, I want to say, nuance to this than what a lot of people realize. This isn't just about your sun sign. That's not what I'm here for. Any astrologer that's actually serious about astrology isn't going to do sun sign astrology. They're straight up going to be like, they know that there's a hell of a lot more to this than just that. All right. I also do a lot with minor aspects and stuff as well, but that's not really a part of this video. It out there that there is definitely more to this than what a lot of people, know and realize in that way. And there's a lot of good astrologers out there that also know this as well. And a lot of astrologers too that do this from an intuitive perspective as well, because they realize that that's an aspect of this that is indeed necessary. Or I feel that it is necessary, and I'm guided to that, because without that aspect, you're just using your mind to try to figure things out, and you're not really, the mind is very limited within this reality, and it's going to be very difficult to try to get appropriate answers in that way. You really have to tap into that feminine aspect of yourself, that intuitive part of you, to really kind of bring through what this is, and then use that communicative part to bring it out. All right, I think I've said enough now on kind of the introduction to where I want to take this, kind of a brief introduction, I guess, to what generational astrology is. There's a lot to astrology, so that's kind of just a general overview in a way. So just understand that I'm just trying to put enough out there so that you have a general understanding of where this is going, basically. All right, and if you are watching this on TikTok, I'm sorry, this video is probably going to be about an hour long, so sit tight. All right, if you're on YouTube, you know that my videos are normally this long. And yeah, so with that being said, let's go into the charts here. I'm going to pull up my chart here. We're going to jump on in. All right, so the chart I have is set for the day that I am recording this, all right, which would be November 13th, 2024. Okay, so one thing that I want to do as we kind of dive into this is one thing that I consider the signifier of generations, and that I've been kind of guided to consider the signifier of generations, is Pluto. Because Pluto spends really the longest time in a sign. Pluto's orbit is very, how do we say this, like elliptical? Excuse me. So pay attention to this. And so it can spend, it varies, let's say between like 10 to 20 years, and I think even a bit longer in some signs, right? It varies per sign. And so with how I have this chart set here, of course, Pluto is at 29 degrees Capricorn and is about to make its final move into Aquarius and remain there for the next 20 years until 2044. And then it moves into Pisces. Okay, so Pluto, and of course, Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, and Pluto is known to give power to the sign that's in, but it's also the planet of transformation. Scorpio is the sign of transformation, right? So it gives that power, it's that transformation, it's that what that generation is here to transform. What are they here to do? What is their raw power that they have in their chart, in that generational aspect? So we got Pluto here, currently at 29 degrees Capricorn, like I said. So we're going to take a look at this. Gen Z is from, if we consider Pluto the signifier of generations, would be Pluto in Sagittarius, which would be from around 1996 to 2008. All right, there's going to say, well, Gen Z from like this year to this year to this year, if you consider it from like, I don't know, what they say. Right? However, when I'm looking at this at an astrological perspective, we're going to look at Pluto in Sagittarius. However, we're also going to look at where all of the other outer planets are throughout this time frame to give a view of maybe what I would call like elder Gen Z, so those who are maybe born in the late 90s into the early 2000s, and then maybe younger Gen Z, which is born in like the later 2000s up to that 2008 range, and we're going to see some differences even within that range, within the generation itself. However, but that still carries that Pluto in Sagittarius vibe within that range, if you know what I'm saying. So let's jump in here. I'm going to go right to Pluto. We're going to hop in here to our event navigator and zodiac sign transit. We're going to go backwards. So we're hitting retrograde city here. Let's go back. Pass all these retrogrades. Yeah. So we can see Pluto ingressed Capricorn to stay in Capricorn for the time that it did back in November 26th, 2008. Right? So now let's go back because we want Pluto in Sagittarius. So we're going to go back, because we can see the retrogrades again around that time. There we go. So initially, November 10th, 1995. We're going way back. So like I said, roughly 1996 to 2008, since we're talking about November 1995. So let's just click this date, and we're going to head on into this chart and see where this takes us. So we're back at November 10th, 1995, where we can see Pluto here entering into Sagittarius. Now, let's talk about this for a moment. Pluto, Sagittarius. What's Sagittarius? We talked a bit about Pluto, so what's Sagittarius? Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. It's the sign of expansion. Sagittarius is a sign of positivity, multiple directions, all these things, gifts, abundance. It's fucking Santa Claus, right? It's that big, jovial, positive type of energy, right? You know, if everybody wants to be a Sagittarius, everybody wants to be positive and happy, right? So, however, for what I feel with this generation, with Gen Z, with Pluto here, Pluto is giving transformational power to this sign. So I feel the main thing with this energy is, one of them is giving hope. Hope to humanity, hope for the future, hope for expansion, but expansion into different perspectives, understanding different ways of being. Another thing that I'm being drawn to here, or feeling here, is that multiple cultures, almost like the elimination of racism in a way, as Sagittarius also can be like expanding out to the whole world, right? Gemini can relate to your local environment, whereas Sagittarius is like the world, or like the rest of the world, or like globally in that way. So this gives an emphasis to that. And when you think of this generation, right, this generation has lived with the internet in existence through their entire lives. So one thing that would connect us on that global level would be the internet, right? It's technology, the internet in that way. And interesting, I'm kind of being drawn here too at this time, this Pluto in sextile to Uranus here in Capricorn. And of course, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, is what the sign that, of course, rules technology, right? So there's even right at the ingress here, we're already heading into that space, okay? But again, that connection in that sense, that global connection, and also, especially for those that live in America, it's technological. We have airplanes, we have all this technology and stuff now, where the amount of mixed races or mixed people that are around us in our day-to-day lives is more so concentrated now than I say probably ever has been before in a lot of ways. Just, like I said, due to immigration, not even just like North America where I am, but in other parts of the world as well, where there's, different people traveling, or different, like I said, immigration, all of that kind of stuff. There's more of an awareness of different cultures, different ways of beings, all that kind of stuff. However, with this generation, there's an expansion of that, and Pluto gives power to that understanding that there's more than one way to be. I'm hearing like more than one way to be, more than one way to live. I'm being guided to the aspect of beliefs now, in terms of Sagittarius also rules beliefs. More than one way to believe, more than one way to even consider spirituality. Like when you think like Gen Z is a generation that's more into things like astrology and that kind of stuff, because they see multiple vantage points in multiple ways in order to experience those things. They see it away from that traditional like churchy perspective. Some of them might be in that way, and I'm not going to get into my opinion on church here at all. Let's not go there. But like I said, my opinion is different a lot of times than what comes through astrologically. Okay, let's just maybe not different, but like what I mean is I'm going to be objective here. I want to try my best to be objective here and not give any influence to that, into my personal beliefs into this as well, right? Because I think that's, again, part of maybe what this is. Maybe that's coming through at this time, because Pluto and Sagittarius is like, there's multiple ways to think and be, and expansion in that way. It's the power of expansion to see those multiple ways, to give hope to a new way, of being, all of that kind of stuff with that Pluto in Sagittarius type of energy. Excuse me. Oh my God. Okay, so maybe that is something to pay attention to. Now, another thing I want to look at here is, of course, the outer planets, right? So we've got Saturn in Pisces here. So interestingly enough, at this time, there would be Gen Z who are roughly heading towards 30 that are experiencing their Saturn return at this point, because Saturn is also currently in Pisces, right? So they're going through that growth now. Okay, so something happened with OBS and everything just kind of closed on me as I'm not sure exactly where I was with that, but I know that I was talking about Saturn. I'm going to consider this maybe a sign in this video, and talking about Saturn, Pisces being like the unknown or the unseen or behind the scenes type of stuff, and then with Saturn here, Saturn is restriction. And of course, Pisces, I'm feeling guided now. Pisces is like the media, or what we can think of as like movies, media, YouTube videos, that kind of stuff. It could be, in a sense, social media, and we'll get to more of that later on with Gen Z here. But I feel like Saturn in like restricting that, or like control. And that could come from that higher perspective, or from like an unknown force, as Pisces is almost like that unseen creative type of aspect as well. So I'm going to take that as a sign that that happened right when I was talking about Saturn in Pisces, to just kind of roll with that in this way here. So you might see this kind of put together. I wasn't really planning on editing this video, but I guess I don't have a choice anymore. Anyway, so yeah, so we're dealing with that aspect of Saturn. Saturn is also an aspect of karma as well. Karma as in like, how do I put this? It's not just a balancing, but karma as in what is your karma, what you kind of came here to do in that sense as well. And Saturn, like I said, teaches through restriction. So there may have been a restriction of compassion at some point with whoever has, Saturn in Pisces, a restriction of, maybe I don't want to say movies or media, but like a restriction of maybe spirituality is something that was coming through. But a restriction, compassion, spirituality, creativity, something that was coming through in that way. But again, Saturn teaches through restriction, but that's where you need to expand. That's where that expansion comes from, right? That Sagittarian energy. That's where you need to expand and grow, right? When we're dealing with Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, it's that growth, but it's very slow growth because it's physical growth. Saturn and Capricorn know that it takes time to get to where you need to go, right? So there's that aspect of that as well. Okay, so at the beginning here, then we have that Saturn in Pisces. Another thing I want to touch on here is Uranus and Neptune. So here we have Uranus and Neptune conjunct in Capricorn. Now, this is a highlight for Gen Z, as we're going to see later when we're going to have Neptune going into Aquarius and Pisces. So these two planets, I feel, are another main signifier of aspects of this generation. All right, so right now at the onset of Pluto entering into Sagittarius, we have this Uranus conjunct Neptune. It is in the sign of Capricorn. Now, Uranus and Capricorn can be destabilizing structures. So I'm being guided to talk about the end of the Cold War. So the Cold War ended, I think it was, oh my God, what, 1991-ish, somewhere in there? But Uranus was transiting Capricorn. You consider Capricorn that physical structure, or the Berlin Wall, and Uranus that destabilizing, like lightning strike, or like that almost like rebellion behavior that breaks that down, that breaks down those barriers to show that there's uniqueness, individuality. We need to express that, embrace that, have that humanitarian part, right? Break down those walls in that sense. Right? So again, the energy at this time was conducive to that type of thing. Of course, 1991 was the era of millennials. or Gen Y, I guess, if you want to call them that. But yeah, so that's kind of, I'm just kind of giving a flavor of what that is. Where exactly was I going with that? So Berlin Wall, I think it was in 91. And I actually remember seeing part of that on TV. I was just like, I was what, like 5? I remember seeing that on TV. But yeah, anyway, so, and with this Uranian conjunct Neptune, that almost gives like there's no boundaries to this, right? Pisces is also no boundaries. There's no boundaries to Pisces. It's like the infinite ocean. There's no boundaries to Pisces. It's Pisces rules spirituality, creativity, those types of things. And so it's like this infinite expansion of whatever is possible in the universe. It's like that your creativity is limitless, right? Spirituality and how we connect to that is like, it's almost like where we come from is like there's this limitless perspective, and you can be and create anything that you want or desire in that sense, right? So with this conjunction to Uranus, it gives like that kind of vibe. With Capricorn here, though, Neptune in Capricorn is almost like solidifying that fantasy or that desire, that, like I said, that fantasy, that creativity, in a sense, that desire, like into a physical reality. With Uranus here, that can be something radically and completely different, right? As in, like, a physical reality can be completely different than from what we've previously known. And I can touch on this now, but a lot of what the vibe that I get from this generation, and we're going to see further on as we look, is this destabilization of the old world. Gen Z is not here to fit in. All right, and we're going to see this more with this Uranus and Neptune stuff coming up as we move forward through the years. But Gen Z is not here to fit in, and that's the vibe of this Uranus-Neptune type energy. I consider the old world to be like very like Capricornian, structure, control. You got to fit into this box. Do you fit this label, this label, this label, this label? Da, 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 da. Excuse me. Okay, pay attention to this, right? It's all those labels fitting into this thing. This Uranus and Neptune type energy does not fit into a box. There's no boxes here. No boxes. Okay? I feel like I'm being guided to now think of like things like how we consider them like, I don't want to call them disorders. There's like all these things, like if you have, sorry, I don't mean to like call them that, but some people refer to them as like if you have a mental disorder or something like that. But there's like a uniqueness or individuality to that. Like if you're born with that, like let's say, I don't know, I don't really want to label or say anything now. I don't want to call them disorders at all, but I'm kind of feeling guided to that some people may consider them that, but I feel like, okay, it relates to the old world, that's what the old world would consider to be a disorder. Okay, thank you. I'm getting this now as it's coming through. That's what the old world would consider to be a disorder. However, I think what we're trying to show here is that it's not. There's an idea of unconditional love that exists here with this type of energy, and it's breaking free of those old structures. So it's like what people would consider like maybe whether you have ADHD or if you're autistic or if you have certain like ARFID, like eating disorders or something. I think that's an eating thing. If you have ARFID, I think it's okay, don't ask me what that stands for. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anyone with this. I'm just saying like there's all these different things, and I'm not saying that this hasn't existed before this generation, because it has. It definitely has. It's just the energy that is beginning to come through here, and this is just the beginning, that is beginning to come through here is now showing that there's any possibility to be anything, and there's a uniqueness and individuality to this that exists, that anything is possible in the realm of creativity, right? And that relates to this Pluto and Sagittarius as well, is this emphasis, this power to that there's more than one way. It's this expansion of this vision is kind of what I'm getting. Expansion of the vision in terms of, the generational aspect here. So what I mean, I think I said at the beginning of this video, is astrology is an energetic template that is conducive to certain things. Well, the generational aspects of Gen Z are conducive to these things. So the souls that wish to experience things in this way, or to show the world an example of unconditional love in this way, or to show that there's not just this one way to be, but that there's any way to be, the souls that specifically wanted to do that or incarnate in this energy, well, came to incarnate in this energy, or in that energy, right? In this generation's type of energy, to do those things. This can also relate to aspects of gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender, those kinds of things, right? That's all valid, okay? And I've talked in previous videos before about how we all have divine masculine and feminine energy within us all. However, you can have your different sexual orientation, gender identity, all of that stuff. You can be a guy and express feminine. You can be a female, express male. You can be non-binary and express both, or maybe what you feel is neither, right? So it could be anything. That's the possibility of anything that exists within this, right? And that's what that is. It's that expansion of that idea that anything is possible, uniqueness, individuality, creativity, showing that anything is possible and that you can be anything. And that you're not here to fit into a box, right? It's getting rid of that old world mentality. And a lot of this, again, that's kind of coming through here is, I personally, and I don't know if other people have seen this, but I see that Gen Z tends to talk about mental health issues a lot. It's almost like there's maybe more mental health, and I'm talking like, stuff like anxiety or depression, those heavy kinds of things that they deal with, and they're more open to things like seeing a therapist and looking after that stuff and being healthy, trying to be healthy in those ways a lot better than previous generations have. However, a lot of this, I think, boils down to the fact that a lot of them simply cannot be fit into a box. And our current world that exists tries to fit people into a fucking box. When that's not going to work for this generation. And I think because they're in this world that is just so restrictive and just so you have to be this way, you have to do this, you can't do it that way, yada, 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 that they have an extremely difficult time, because that goes against exactly what they came here to be. They came here to be the exact opposite of that, because they're here to help transform the world. Pluto in Sagittarius. Sagittarian being the world, transform the world, expand the vision, expand the mind. You could even say to expand the heart in a lot of those ways, because Sagittarius is that jovial energy. It's a mutable sign. It's changeable. Mutable means like changeable, right? They're here to inflict that change, to say that, hey, there isn't just this one way to be. And anyone that has been gay or trans or anything that is deemed as different than what society says that you should be, knows how difficult that this is, and knows the mental health struggles that exist within those realms. And I feel, and I think that a lot of what I've witnessed in that comes a lot from these aspects within their charts, basically, in this sense. Okay, and I'm kind of going on because there's a lot of this stuff came through already, and as I'm seeing this, I'm kind of letting it out, letting this through. However, I think we need to move forward now because we're still at November 10th of 1995. So let's move on, go years here, switch to years, come on, load, and then we'll go to 96 and then see where these outer planets have taken us, excuse me. All right, so now we're in the realm, we see Pluto 2 degrees of Sagittarius. Now we're seeing here, another thing I wanted to touch on was Jupiter as well. So Jupiter and Capricorn here. But we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so another thing here, so we can see this Uranus is now in its home sign of Aquarius. So this is strongly more emphasizing this uniqueness, individuality, this rebellious flavor that I'm talking about with this generation. And of course, Neptune still in Capricorn here. So again, there could be an aspect, I'm almost sensing maybe a restriction, but there's like this, like I said, it's almost like that grounding in of that higher vision into a physical reality. Okay, so where do we want to go here? Another thing that can be considered, I don't know if I'd want to consider it completely generational, but Jupiter. However, Jupiter still moves fairly quickly compared to the other what you would consider generational planets, as Jupiter spends roughly 1 year in each sign. So we consider this, Jupiter in Capricorn, it's expanding on those Capricornian themes. However, you have Uranus in Aquarius here. So there could be that expansion of that. There's kind of like a borderline here, maybe at this end of things, as we're kind of, this is like the bridge between these first years of like millennials into Gen Z, but they still do have this Pluto and Sagittarius aspect that is here. So Jupiter and Capricorn expanding on those Capricornian themes. I'm feeling what I'm getting now is it's expanding from those restricted types of themes and energy, because we have to remember Pluto here is in Jupiter's sign of Sagittarius, giving power to this expansion. Jupiter might be in Capricorn, but with these are kind of like relating to each other, as Jupiter rules Sagittarius, but Jupiter's in Capricorn. Pluto is here, and then whenever you're dealing with Pluto, you got this extremely powerful little planet that's just wanting to transform all this stuff. So this energy is kind of related to transform and expand in these areas of Capricorn, expand in these structures, expand in that sense as well, and ground that into reality with this Neptune aspect here, and understanding uniqueness and individuality with this Uranus here in Aquarius. All right, and of course now we have the next part of this generation where we're going to have Saturn in Aries. So a lot of this would be the restriction of self, restriction of self-identity. Of course, Saturn, remember, teaches through restriction. So through that restriction is learning to expand. So expanding in it could even be assertiveness as well. Expanding in that sense, but expanding, I feel a lot of it is in self-identity, an individuality in that way as well with Saturn and Aries. But that comes through growth, right? That comes as you get older, right? You don't want to be restricted in yourself, in your identity. You want to expand. You got to learn to be your own person in that way with Saturn in Aries. So possibly through growing up, you could have had a restriction of that in some way, and you're learning to expand. And of course, again, that could deal with expansion of this Sagittarian, Capricornian things to not be so restrictive in that way. I feel like people that are kind of born in this energy specifically now likely dealt with some aspect of restriction in terms of where they need to truly and honestly expand within that area going forward here. I'm trying to make this video as short as possible, but I may have to split this up into multiple parts on TikTok, and on YouTube it'll be fine. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just keep watching. If you're watching this on TikTok, well, you might have to head on over to part 2 at some point, because we might be a while here. Okay. All right, so let's move on now another year. Let's go to 1997. Okay, so now still Pluto and Sagittarius, 4 degrees, obviously. Still Pluto and Sag, because we're still with Gen Z. But now we're going to have this Jupiter in Aquarius type energy along with Uranus. Okay, we're still having Saturn in Aries. We still have Neptune here at the end of Capricorn. But now we have this Jupiter and Uranian type of energy in Aquarius. So again, now this is expanding even more in the sense of uniqueness, individuality. Now this Jupiter in Aquarius is relating to Pluto and Sagittarius, expanding more on this uniqueness, individuality, all those things, and expanding that in multiple different directions, even more so now. So I can kind of feel it now. I understand what this is. It's like that initial transition as we shift into what this generation is really supposed to be. So those who are born maybe 95, 96, that are right on that cusp, it's like you have that vibe of Gen Z, but it's not quite as much as what we're going to see here coming up. And especially now we're heading into 97 with this more Uranian and eventually like Neptunian type of stuff coming through as we head into the early 2000s. So this is like that transition period between the generations and how this is starting to cycle and flow through. Right? So, but we're still dealing with this Saturn in Aries type of energy, so that restriction of self, that identity. So those who are born in these years, like I said, are dealing with that as kind of your, wanted to say self-inflicted karma, because obviously you kind of choose to incarnate when you're going to incarnate, be the person you're meant to be. But remember, those lessons are meant for your own growth, and you chose that in this life for whatever reason, and in terms of how to expand within that area in your own life. Of course, to know more about that and how this affects you individually, it's always best to have a personal reading, right? I do offer personal readings. It can be regarding any questions you have as well. However, you don't have to get a reading with me if you don't necessarily resonate with me. But I would suggest that you go to someone that you do resonate with, number one, and number two, someone that has certain kinds of ethics and understands astrology from a perspective of knowing what it actually is, and not just, oh, this is your big three, or oh, this is your sun sign, because they're not going to help you. The people that are just about your sun sign and your big three, they're not going to help you. I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to hate on anyone, because maybe they don't even realize it themselves, right? Or they're just kind of going with the flow of whatever is going to be popular on social media and not actually doing this from a place of integrity. Okay, so just be mindful of that when you do want to approach someone for a reading in this way. And I'm not saying it doesn't have to be with me. If you don't like something I've said in this video and you want to go do it with somebody else because that's what you feel in your own heart to do, by all means. But if you do feel to get a reading with me, I do offer that, right? You got to do what's going to feel best for you. Okay, this isn't about like anybody else. And maybe, again, I'm burping here again. That's that Saturn and Aries coming through. It's where you need to expand. What's going to be what's best for you. All right. Okay, I think I've kind of touched on all of that for now. Let's go to 98. Because if I talk too much, this video is going to be long as hell. Okay, so 98. Another thing I'm kind of being drawn to with this Uranian type of energy, as well as Uranus, Aquarius, specifically the planet Uranus, is that higher octave of Mercury. And we know that Gen Z kind of has their own language, in a way, their own speak, right? And so with this Uranian, this uniqueness, individuality coming from like this higher realm, almost seemingly out of nowhere in a sense, is the type of energy of Aquarius, Uranus. But dealing with that higher octave of Mercury, which is of course the mind communication and communication, we're in that place of where there may be like changes or things, uniqueness kind of coming through in that sense. You know, like Gen Z has their own kind of unique slang, their own words that they use. Like I'm thinking things, you know, like bussin', or like no cap, or, you know, like in a sentence that's 10 out of 10 bussin', no cap on God, for real, you know, like all of that kind of stuff. Or I'm gay, so the word bussy. Okay, that didn't exist before Gen Z, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a millennial. That didn't exist before your generation. Okay, I didn't know what a bussy was until social media was a thing. But like, that's what I mean, is like there's these terms that they've just kind of developed seemingly out of nowhere that are, you know, this new creative way to speak and express in this new unique kind of a way, right? And that's not a bad thing. Like, I like their slang. I think it's cool. It's like this fun, it gives like that youthful vibe. And again, that's Uranus and Aquarius. That's that vibe. And I think now I'm feeling that's what I felt before coming on to do this video, was that youthful vibe of Gen Z. And that comes through with that Aquarian energy. It's very progressive. Aquarius is very progressive, very wanting to think new, move forward into these new directions, respect your uniqueness, individuality. Aquarius can be like edgy too. Like it's on the realms of, it's like on the edges of things. Like you're not like I said, you're not fitting in. It's not like a fitting in type of thing that exists within this generational energy. Okay, so we're on to 98 now. Pluto, Sagittarius. We're at Neptune here at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So now we're right on the edge here, as eventually Neptune is going to shift into Aquarius. All right, and that's going to be a thing coming up here. Of course, now we have Jupiter in Pisces. So now there's this expansion on this creativity, this fantasy. I initially wanted to say this unknown, because it's almost like You have ultimate unlimited creativity in the realm of Pisces. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. This is extreme expansion. No boundaries exist within this realm, within this area, right? So sorry, I'm like checking the time because I want to make sure I can try to fit this all in here, right? So it's an expansion of those things, and it's all that stuff that I've already kind of mentioned and talked about already here. So let's move on again to 99. So again, we're still stuck on the date, November 10th. I'm just going to kind of here, and we're going to move through the years as we go, right? I'm just kind of doing this on the fly, and whatever's coming through is whatever's coming through regarding Gen Z, this generation, and I can feel it coming through. I can feel you guys. But yeah, it's all good. Don't worry. Okay, so again, Pluto Sag, and here we are. Here we now have this Neptune at 1 degree of Aquarius. So again, now we hear this Uranus and Neptune in the sign of Aquarius. So now this is adding more to that flavor of anything goes regarding uniqueness, individuality. Anything kind of goes in this way as well. There's creativity to be whatever uniqueness that you want to be, right? There's boundlessness to how you can exist, how you can be in this way. And like I said, I'm getting a sense of like sexuality, gender identity, sexual orientation kind of coming through here. However, I'm not saying that these things didn't exist before, because they did. Remember, astrology is an energetic template conducive to certain things becoming manifest, right? So you could have in your chart, whether there's these planets or other planets or aspects or whatever coming through that has a certain vibration that's similar to this, that allowed you to be that at a completely different time frame in life, like 40, 50, 60 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever. Excuse me, pay attention to that. So this type of energy can still exist even if it's in a small way, or what I mean by that as in like coming in through a small period of time instead of generational like Gen Z, right? So it can still come through in a smaller way, and not, like I said, not generational like Gen Z, and don't know why I'm repeating myself here, but it can still come through in that way. So those things still have been able to exist at that time, right? You still have unlimited creativity, and the universe is going to help you to manifest whatever you want to bring through in that sense, right? Especially if it comes from that high vibrational place of unconditional love and all these different things. That's what wants to bring through. The universe is all about expansion. Universe is infinite. Expand, 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 expand. Expand in learning through different unique perspectives and those kinds of things. That's what we want. That's the unconditional love. That's what this is. Not the bullshit that we've been taught to believe by our society. And again, I'm being drawn back to that Pluto and Sagittarius, that transformation of old outdated beliefs and expanding into new ways. All right, so that is part of kind of really what is coming through here. This is, again, and Pluto and Sagittarius, this is the generation of hope. Hope towards this expansion, hope towards moving into these new spaces and new directions, right? We see a lot with Gen Z, this more progressive type of attitude. And of course, that's not always. Again, I'm not here to say, again, like what I'm talking about, Gen Z is like expansive. There is no one size fits all here. So there is no one size fits all here. Again, with the power of the universe and manifestation, even with these energies, you could have a chart where maybe certain houses align in certain aspects where what I'm talking about is somewhat limited, and maybe you are a bit more not as progressive as your peers. Okay, so that is something that can still come through here. However, what I'm talking about is this generation as a whole. And I feel like as a whole, they are more conducive to definitely not fitting into a box and expanding into new areas and new directions and things like that, right? That's just kind of the energy that is existing with this generation as this is coming through. But like I said, that doesn't always have to be the case, and there is no one size fits all. Okay, I'm trying to do my best to try to fit as much in here as I can to give some kind of a general understanding, but like I said, this video is going to turn out to be a lot longer than what I intended it to be, and I think that is honestly and ultimately for good reason, to show that, you can't just be fit into a box. Okay. All right, I think that here. Oh my god, my computer's freaking out a bit. Can we move? Come on. There. All right, okay, let's move on now to the year 2000. So the end of the year 2000. Okay, so we're still having this Neptune and Uranian type energy in Aquarius. Okay, so it's again still this anything goes type of energy in terms of uniqueness, individuality, all of that. Pluto Sag. Let's take a look here. We're now having, I guess I never really talked about Jupiter and Taurus. Sorry, skipped through that. Jupiter and Taurus is expanding on, I always consider Jupiter and Taurus like abundance, but there's an aspect of stubbornness to Taurus as well. It's also sensuality, sensual things. It can be a very strong feminine type of energy. But again, if you're looking at what specifically this means for you in your chart, it's always best to get a reading. Don't stick with some overgeneralized thing. Yes, you may resonate with some or a lot of this. However, how specifically that's going to be for you in your life and why you specifically incarnated into this energy is why you would need a personal reading specifically for you in your chart, right? And you need the whole fucking chart, guys, the whole chart, not just somebody being like, oh, you have Sun in Sagittarius and your rising is this and that means this. No, I'm straight up. I'm just gonna fucking say it. No, you need to look at the whole chart, okay? Because you came into that energy, the whole chart, for a reason. And a lot of it interrelates and overlaps with each other in terms of a lot of different things in your life, right? There's different octaves to the scale, so to speak, to the vibrational scale. There's different frequencies and there's all kinds of things here, right? You may have had a certain aspect for a certain thing, but it also relates to this other thing in this other different way, but still relates to the theme of that sign and so on, right? There's a hell of a lot more to this than just your sun sign and your rising sign and your moon, okay? If anybody's just trying to tell you and sell you on just your sun, rising, and moon or whatever like that, run. Fucking run. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't, you guys, you don't have to be, oh my God, I'm scrolling around, what am I doing here? Like I said, this doesn't have to be with me. You don't have to get a reading with me. It's whatever that you resonate with. With my computer today. It's like every time, OBS, you don't have to resource hog. Okay, we're gonna stick with okay, so OBS crashed. Yeah, well, OBS didn't. Well, it kind of did. The encoder crashed. OBS didn't fully crash. So I think, like I said, when I do these readings, part of this is intuitive. And one thing I've learned with intuitive readings, if I can talk, is that anything that happens during the reading is part of the reading. And I feel like part of what I'm being guided to talk about here is a lot of this Uranian, Neptunian energy here in Aquarius. And of course, not only how that can relate to technology, because Aquarius rules technology, but I wanted to say the instability of things, as in like, I think where I'm going with this is like there's no there's like a uniqueness here, but there's like, again, Uranus Aquarius can deal with like instability. There is no, like, I think the idea is flexibility is another word that I'm hearing coming through here. Instability, but flexibility. It's like this, it's not the traditional sense of Capricorn where there's like this foundation and you must be this and you must do this. It's like, you gotta go with the flow. And I feel like that's that Neptune in Aquarius. You gotta go with the flow because shit's just gonna happen out of nowhere and it's just gonna come at you out of nowhere and you just gotta fucking deal with it. You just gotta deal with it. Okay, thank you. I think that's what we're getting at here. That Neptune in Aquarius, sorry, did I say Capricorn before? Neptune in Aquarius, it's just like that, just going with the flow with stuff just happening. With stuff just happening on a whim. Right? And again, that's like that destabilization, but it's not really unstable. It's just like, you just need to go with it, right? You just need to kind of roll with it and go with it and just kind of do it in that sense, right? So, and that, again, that's another aspect that's coming through because I remember looking at another person's chart who is Gen Z that has this Neptune in Aquarius type of energy. And that can also relate as well to almost like that ADHD mentality, that's like stuff just coming out of nowhere, like you're saying things out of nowhere, or that kind of stuff coming through. That can also relate to, especially if you have Chiron in Aquarius, or maybe Chiron in the 11th house. That's where your wound is. And because Aquarius is that higher octave of Mercury, you're dealing with that mental or communicative type stuff where it can feel like it's that out of nowhere. It's like your attention shifts and has to go here, 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 here kind of thing. Okay, I'm not an expert on ADHD or a lot of that stuff, so I apologize if what I'm saying is not like fully descriptive of what that actually is. I only have a high level view of what that is. So forgive me in how I'm trying to say that. And if you want to, if you maybe want to correct me, or you're wanting to help me to have more of an understanding of that, you can feel free to leave a comment below and help me to maybe understand that a bit more. However, I do feel like that is relating to kind of what that is, right? It's like, remember, ADHD isn't, and I'm kind of being drawn to the fact that the world wants to give you a drug to make you feel quote unquote normal again, to fit in. But is that really, it's like, you kind of are that way for a reason. So, and that's not just to say that just Gen Z has this. Okay, like I said, that astrology is the energetic template conducive to certain things where this stuff can come through, even not as Gen Z, but it can be manifested in those ways as well, right? So there's other people of older generations, like I said, that can have an inkling of this energy as well that is conducive to that, to being ADHD or, whatever in that way. I don't mean whatever in a bad way. I mean, like, it can be like anything, right? It's not just talking about this specifically, but like there's certain energies conducive to certain things. Okay, so there is that aspect of, like I said, that instability, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing, especially with Neptune here. That's about like going with the flow in that way as well, just rolling with it, like I said. And I also want to come on here and say that, and honestly, in a way, what I feel is coming through too, is that there's nothing wrong with having ADHD. That's something in a lot of ways that may actually be a gift, even an intuitive gift, considering Neptune rules Pisces and Neptune in Aquarius, that kind of like out of nowhere, maybe intuitive hit that just hits you to be like, okay, got to go in this direction now, got to do this, or pay attention to this, or this all of a sudden suddenly happened. That could be something that's saving your ass. That could be something that's coming through as guidance in a way as well, for those of you that maybe are intuitive and have this type of energy in your chart in that sense. Again, it relates on a chart by chart basis, so remember that. But there is something to this, and obviously something that wanted to come through again regarding this. So again, you have to forgive me. I'm going with the flow here just as much, and these things are happening, but I feel it's relating to certain things that are honestly, seriously wanting to come through to be talked about regarding the aspects of this generation. Like I said, some stuff has come through before, some stuff I've known before, and I'm being reminded of as I'm doing this, and it's kind of coming through now, right? So yeah, I'm also being drawn here to look at, we now have, at this point in time, year 2000, Saturn is in Taurus. Obviously Saturn teaches through restriction. Taurus can deal with, like stubbornness. It can deal with like money, abundance, material things, that kind of stuff. So maybe a restriction of that grows over time through life, and through that growth and maturation as you mature that experience. Right? It can happen very slowly, but again, that's where you need to expand, is in those areas. Maybe I need to be more stubborn. Maybe you need to be more sensual. Maybe you need to enjoy more of the physical things in life a bit more in this way as well. Right? Or that's what you're learning to do. It doesn't have to be in a greedy or negative way. It could just be simple things like enjoying good food, enjoying sex, enjoying the hands on your skin, that act of the intimacy, the physical part of intimacy that is involved there. Maybe there was a restriction of that, and that's where you're learning to expand on in that way as well. And like I said, with this Uranian Neptunian energy, that can deal with sex and sexuality as well in terms of anything goes, things happening on a whim, getting rid of those old outdated beliefs surrounding that you only have to be with one person for your whole life. With Uranus and Neptunian energy, no, that old belief and ideal is thrown out the fucking window with this energy. Straight out the fucking window. If you want to talk about sex in Aquarius, that's like multiple partners, okay? Multiple partners. When we talk about, like what's your body count, okay? I don't think the idea of a body count was really much of a thing for, well, at least maybe not so much in my generation, but it's come up almost like more recently. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. There's no shaming here, okay? There's no slut shaming, to use like, I guess, a Gen Z term. Okay, there's no slut shaming here. There's nothing at all wrong with having sex. Okay, and if we want to get into that realm right now, sex is just like, at the point of orgasm is the merging of two souls at that point, right? Well, as a soul, we're all fractals of source, of the universe in that sense, and that coming together, those two souls coming together is like that merging and that return back to source. That's why it can feel so good, right? In that way, because it's like that feeling of almost like returning home to where you came from. But you're only experiencing that on a smaller level with one other person. It's like you're experiencing, it's like there's a puzzle and there's all the pieces to the puzzle, and you want the puzzle to be back together again because that's where you come from. You're one piece of that whole puzzle. And when you merge back with one other piece, even though there's many other pieces of the puzzle, you feel what it's like to be part of that whole again. If you understand my drift in terms of what I'm getting at in that way. So anyway, that's kind of a tangent that we kind of went on there. More Uranian type of energy. But yeah, okay. All right, let's move on to the next year now. So 2001, the end of 2001. So again, Pluto Sag, we have more of this Neptune and Uranus type thing in Aquarius here. Interesting. I'm just looking at this Black Moon Lilith here in Pisces. Black Moon Lilith is where I feel outcast. Could feel outcast in terms of compassion, in terms of spiritual beliefs and that kind of stuff, relating to those who maybe, have this in their charts as well. So maybe this is something that wanted to come through in this way as well. I know Black Moon Lilith it's not really a planet. It's like an asteroid, or one of the minor bodies of astrology. Or actually, no, in this Black Moon Lilith is actually the, how do I say this? Lilith is an asteroid, yes, but that is not this one that I am focusing on here. Sorry, my mind is going in multiple directions. I'm not used to the energy that's coming through here. Okay, so this version of Lilith deals with a calculation regarding the moon's orbit. Okay, but this is Lilith, and like all the Liliths, if we deal with Lilith energy in general, is that where we've been, I'm feeling drawn to say just where we've been outcast. Okay, in this sense, it's where we've been outcast is where I feel to really take this and not explain much further than that at this point. All right, so where we've been outcast in this way, and in terms of Pisces, that's creativity, spirituality, again, relating to spiritual beliefs in that sense as well, but spirituality, compassion, imagination, those kinds of things. I don't know why I wanted to say creativity again, but again, you could feel outcasted in that sense as well. There's a feeling of rebellion that maybe comes through in that way, or you may seem rebellious if you express those things. In terms of compassion and some kinds of things, I think we can all see that in our world today. You may seem rebellious if you want to be compassionate towards people who are different. However, we should be compassionate to everyone. We should be loving of everyone. We need to get rid of these old, outdated mentalities and things and beliefs, right? And that's what this generation is here to hold, okay? So sorry if some of the things I'm saying may seem controversial to some people, but I'm just saying what this energy is and what is honestly coming through and what these generational aspects are. A lot of this stuff is not to be judged. It's simply just not to be judged. All right, I'm spending this video is going to be long. Okay, but there's kind of a lot coming through here. Talking about now we have Saturn in Gemini. Again, Saturn teaches through restriction. Gemini is the mind, local environment, communication, aspects of communication. It's where you need to experience growth or learn the lessons in that sense, or expand in those ways in terms of the mind, communication. It could be learning certain things, but yeah, expansion of the mind, communication is kind of that basic underlying element that exists there. Okay, and of course Jupiter in Cancer, so this is expanding on comfort, home life, that kind of stuff. And again, all this energy can play together depending on where it exists in your chart as well. I feel like that might relate to that compassion thing. You feel outcast in terms of maybe compassion, maybe there's an expansion of compassion that's needed. There's something, I don't know, I feel like there was something going on with this. I don't know where they're trying to take me with this exactly. Is there anything more to this? Home life. Okay, what I'm getting now is there's an expansion regarding maybe aspects of home life, how it relates to your uniqueness, individuality, and maybe a lack of compassion that exists within your home life maybe in some way. And I'm being drawn here because Jupiter is kind of retrograde in this specific chart. So maybe if Jupiter was direct, this would maybe be a bit different for you. All right, so again, I'm just kind of getting what's coming through, so you can almost get a taste of what it's like when I do actual readings. But this is kind of what's coming through in this sense as well. You may be in this way, if you're born at this time, you may be outcasted in that sense as well. And this would be during Scorpio season, so Scorpio intensifies things, and maybe that's something you have to heal and transform. There could have been maybe a restriction. Gemini can also deal with siblings too. Maybe there was a restriction of siblings. Maybe other siblings got stuff that you didn't, and you felt outcasted in that way. Again, that's just one direction that maybe this can go in, especially in terms of Jupiter being retrograde in Cancer and being maybe not as maybe jovial or expansive as it could be. I'm feeling like that energy is just, it's not there in that sense. It's being almost like diluted is what I felt and I was getting in that sense, maybe because Saturn, Cancer is a water sign. But again, Saturn restrict with that idea of restriction, either through siblings or maybe through communication, kind words, those kinds of things that maybe you didn't necessarily get, or you didn't get when you were younger, but you're working on that when you're older, and there's aspects of growth that exist there. Okay, we're getting into the weeds here. This isn't like a personal chart reading. This is other stuff, this is other stuff. Fuck. This is a generational reading, okay? Let's move on. Let's go to 2002. Okay, so 2002 here. Again, Pluto Sag. Now we're having Chiron in Capricorn. So again, we're dealing with wounds of authority, wounds of surrounding aspects of restriction. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. It's where our wound is. It's also how we heal, how we can heal others, but it's also about not only where our wound is, but how we can also hurt others as well if we're coming at this from a negative space and a negative perspective. So we need to kind of be very mindful of that in that way as well. Okay, so be careful with that energy if you do have Chiron in Capricorn, but a lot of this is just wounds of authority, wounds of maybe being known for things, right? Okay, as because Capricorn in your 10th house relates to your vocation, so maybe you feel hurt like being known for a certain thing, or you don't want to be known for whatever. You kind of restrict yourself in that sense. You don't want to be it's like going at the front of the class. It's like Capricorn is like the boss, that kind of thing. It's like you don't want to be maybe you have boss wounds or something, or you don't want to be that kind of, I almost want to say type of leader. I don't know if I'd consider Capricorn a leader. Sorry Capricorn. Just because of the energy of the world now, we live in a lot of negative Capricornian vibes. So that's kind of the vibe that I kind of get from that. However, Capricorn, there are positive things to Capricorn. This could deal with wounds of control as well, in that sense too. But again, with that wound of vocation, it's like what you're known for. It's maybe you're really good at something, but you don't want to be known for it, right? It's like, oh, I'm really good at this, I'm amazing, and I want to do big things in the world, but I don't want to be known for it. Don't put my name on that research paper. Don't put my name on that book. Don't put me, don't want to be in that YouTube video. Like that kind of stuff that just kind of, maybe that's where your wound is, and maybe that's where you need to heal, but maybe that's, as you overcome that, that's maybe how you help heal others in that same way. That's one aspect of that, okay? Another thing I'm being drawn to here now in this chart as well is this Jupiter in Leo in opposition to this Neptune here in Aquarius. It's not exact in this chart, so it's not going to show up, but there are people that are born with this in Gen Z. So Jupiter, Leo being like that expression, that center stage, that in the spotlight type of energy, with Jupiter there expanding that in a jovial, positive way. And of course, I'm being drawn to Pluto and Sagittarius, that power of that, since Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so it's giving power to this expansion of this spotlight type energy, where that opposition to Neptune in Aquarius, social Aquarius, Neptune, media. Social media, expansion of that. If you want to look at some people who have maybe blown up or gotten really big on social media, being the spotlight, pushing their beliefs, transforming the world, having been known around the world in that way, likely have an aspect of this in their chart. That isn't to say that you have to have this to be big on social media, or that everyone big on social media that has that. However, there's a lot of maybe younger Gen Zers that have blown up in this sense and in this way, because remember, they were younger growing through social media, that a lot of older generations didn't have that growing up. So this was more, they were more used to this, so they could have been born with this energy to be able to expand and grow in that area in that way as well. Okay, so Neptune, Pisces, that creativity, that aspect of media, right? Movies, shows, it's like that vision, but it's Pisces is also like that deception, right? Like it's not real. It's like content creation. It's like you're doing things for content, but it might not be actually something that really happened, right? Or it's like a movie as well. Like you're showcasing a story in that sense. I'm not saying all content creators are bad or anything like that. There are certainly some that are bad and don't have people's best interests at heart. However, there are some that are doing this for a good thing. And I'm not saying that if you create content that's not real, that it's bad, because it can be used for entertainment. Obviously, we have movies, TV shows, all that kind of stuff. And this is just a different version or a different form of that exists in a different way as this generation grew up with technology. In fact, they have Uranus in Aquarius, its home sign, dealing a lot with technology. Okay? So and you guys, if I'm talking to Gen Z in this video, or if we just want to reference Gen Z in general, grew up with the good technology. As a millennial, trust me, you did. You did. You want to use an old Apple II to boot off of like a floppy disk and run some game on some CRT monitor with some... Yeah, it was pretty jank, or it was pretty like, things were kind of janky, and like you kind of had to work and understand how things worked and tried to figure stuff out back in the day. Nowadays, it's all fancy graphical user interfaces and touchscreen phones and shit, and everything is just easy. Everything is just easy now. You grew up with the good technology, trust me. And I think these aspects were conducive to using these energies and that technology in that expansive way, and in that way to bring maybe certain people into the spotlight if you're born into that energy for that specific reason. Okay, so again, there is an aspect, even just generally with Neptune in Aquarius as well, with social media. So when you got parents that are being like, you gotta get off your phone and you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, sorry, but this generation is born kind of into this energy. That's their thing. Being on their phone, using technology, I wanted to say doom scrolling, but like scrolling and looking at content, creating content, all of that stuff. That's this generation's type of stuff. And of course, there are other people of older generations that can do that too, right? You can, because like I said, there's certain energies and maybe in your chart that were conducive to that for you. And I'm saying it doesn't mean that you have to have this specifically to be popular on social media or anything like that. What I'm saying is that this is more innate with this generation than it has been, obviously, with any other generation up to this point in time. And this is the first time that we've ever experienced this kind of technology in a generation growing up with social media in this way. All right, so that is something, again, that is unique to this generation, and interesting that we're dealing with Uranian type of energy, that uniqueness, unique to this generation in this way. Excuse me, okay. So maybe that was a point to really strongly pay attention to, and to maybe not look so badly on social media and that kind of stuff. Can social media be used in a bad way? Fuck yeah, it can. Anything can be used in a bad way, right? That's like you can use a hammer to hammer a nail into a wall, or you can use it to do bad things, okay? Like, hello, it's just because it exists doesn't mean that it's bad. It's how you use it, all right? That's what we need to kind of go at here. And that's maybe what older generations also need to hear as well, in terms of their kids, and get off your phone, nah, 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 nah. It's like, well, that's part of their generation. That's part of how they grew up with. There's probably something of your generation too that you did that your parents were like, meh, 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 meh. So do you want to be your parent, how like your parents were to you? Or do you want to actually love and support your kid? I understand there's negative aspects to this stuff, and maybe, you know, there needs to be a balance in some ways, but at the same time, you gotta let them be them. Okay? This generation is not meant to be fit into a box. You try to fit them into the box to the old world or how you were raised, you're just gonna fuck them up. I'm serious. You're just, like, you can't, I'm sorry, this is like really strongly coming through, and if you're offended by this, I'm sorry. I'm saying it as it comes, right? In the sense, I guess, in a way, I'm defending this generation because this is their energy that is coming through here. And this is a valid representation of that energy, right? Just because they do something that you never did and you don't understand doesn't mean that it's bad. Okay? It doesn't at all. All right? Could it be used in a bad way? Is too much of a good thing a bad thing in some ways? Yeah, you could argue that. But you have to take this on a situation by situation basis. Like I said, anything can be bad. Anything at all can be bad. Right? A computer monitor can be bad. The thing that I'm staring at right now, yeah, I can use it to look at my screen and do things. I can also take it and smash it over someone's head. Okay? Like, that's what I mean. That's what I mean by that. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's all about how we use it. And we need to respect the uniqueness that this generation has and that they grew up in that a lot of other people have not. Okay? And there needs to be an understanding of this from older generations as this goes on. And as Gen Z gets older, they're going to be able to have that more mature understanding of what this really is meant for them, and how negative other people or older people were, or their parents were to them through this, and how maybe that hindered them or hurt them in that way. Let's not try to hurt our kids. Let's not try to hurt and I mean, a lot of Gen Z, they're not kids anymore. They're in their 20s at this point. But what I mean is, like, but even still, they're still teenagers, like 18, 19 years old. Like, let's not hurt. Let's try to understand the uniqueness that exists within this generation. Because at this point, from what I'm seeing here, they're unlike a lot of other generations that have existed before, especially in terms of what they have grew up in with technology. And me as a millennial, I remember what it was like to be in school handwriting essays, and then in high school typing them up in Microsoft Office on a fucking computer, learning all of that stuff. Went from one extreme to the next. Learning you have to know how to spell this word, the exact spellings, punctuation, grammar, all of that, to having the fucking computer do it for you, all in the span of like around a decade. Even maybe a bit more than that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, that transformational power. And there's older generations like my parents or people who are a bit older than me that will have no fucking clue what the vibe of Gen Z here is that I'm talking about even means to them, because they never grew up with any of that at all. They grew up in a realm where if they even knew what a computer was, it was the size of a washing machine in the back of their fucking classroom that made a bunch of noise when you turned it on. Right? Like, that's computers of the 70s, like the Centurion or something like that. Okay? Like, it's a completely different thing is what I'm saying. And we have to have understanding and compassion for a different perspective and different viewpoint, because that's what this generation is here to bring. That transformation of that expansion to the world. Okay, wow, there's really a lot coming through, and I feel a really strong intensity of this. Sorry, I gotta have a drink. And that don't mess with them, don't mess with what they came here to do. Because older generations where they believe, oh, this has to be a certain way, you can't do that, you can't do this, that honestly comes from them being beaten into a box. And a lot of trauma that can exist within that, and by just you're just pushing your trauma onto your own kids at that point. In a lot of ways, that, like, I mean, I get it. There's some instances in which that you need to obviously be assertive and obviously take control and obviously know what a good thing is and know what a bad thing is. Okay, but what I'm saying is to have understanding for the difference that this generation had to grow up in. And if I'm talking to Gen Z that are watching this, I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, because you're the ones that are actually experiencing this energy. And if you have any more context to what I'm talking about or want to talk about this more, you can leave a comment below. You can tell me, oh, Mark, you're full of shit. Or if you want to say that, I mean, based on what I've seen in the Gen Z that I've known, I don't think I'm full of shit at all, because I've seen this. I understand what, and I've seen a lot of what older generations think about a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, and versus like Gen Z, and I can see the discrepancy that exists in real life, not just necessarily coming through with the astrology. However, the astrology is a direct reflection of what was manifest through this generation. Okay, like I said, astrology, energetic template, conducive to what can be manifest through that energy. I wanted to say portal as well, through certain. In essence, it's kind of like a portal, but really just energy that's happening at the time. Okay, let's move on. Let's go forward. Oh my God. Okay, 2003. Excuse me. Oh my God. Okay, I was saying let's go forward. Okay, progress. And then the idea of progress came through. So progress. The generation is also about progress. Progress, progress, progress. Not sticking with the old, making progress. All right. Okay, so Pluto is now nearing the end of Sagittarius here. We've got still Neptune here in Pisces, but we're still in Aquarius. Neptune rules Pisces, okay? We've got Uranus here at the end of Aquarius, getting ready to head into Pisces. We're going to talk about that soon. All right, we have Saturn in Cancer. So again, what I feel is being drawn into this family stuff, restriction of family. So again, maybe what I was talking about before now is relating to this. There's maybe a restriction, maybe in terms of your parents. You had harsh parents, or it was restrictive because you were born into this type of energy that's very progressive, expansive in that way. But where you need to expand is, in terms of your family, in terms of like your home life, maybe how are you brought up and what makes you comfortable. There could have been something here. What I'm feeling is like there was something here that was maybe restrictive in your home life that maybe related to a lot of other stuff that I was talking about. I feel like the vibe of this energy now is a bit different than the vibe that I was talking about maybe closer to the beginning of this video if you're born mid-90s Gen Z. But like I said, that transition period, and now we're into this phase where it's like you're here to be unique, you're here to do this thing, and now all of a sudden there's like this, you're feeling these restrictions. There's maybe in areas that restriction of your self-identity. Now there's a restriction in terms of maybe like your family. You feel restricted in terms of your family, or there's something else going on there in terms of where you need to expand. There's growth that needs to occur there. There's a lesson in terms of where maybe you need to expand in your family. Okay, I'm hearing now expand in your family, maybe a family of friends instead of maybe your biological family in a sense. And that's not necessarily going to be for everyone with Saturn in Cancer. All right, but this could maybe deal with aspects of where you feel like comfortable versus uncomfortable of your life, or restriction of comfort. Maybe there's, I don't know, you need to expand in areas of your life that make you feel more comfortable instead of not. Like there could be an aspect of that here as well. But initially what I was drawn to was like that aspect of family, right? And Saturn is where you need to expand. So maybe you need to, okay, what I'm getting now is expand your maybe you're meant to like expand your family. But what I mean by that is you came through as the person that you are with this energy to basically help those that were close to you, in this case family, to realize that not everything can be fit into the box in that old way. that you came here in your own uniqueness, in your own way, that's so completely unchangeable in that way that you're here to kind of like shake things up in a sense. You felt that restriction through your family, but as you grow, as you get older, as your family realizes you're not fucking changing, you're still this unique person that you are, that you actually help them to grow in that way as well. In that sense too. Yeah, so. All right, that's kind of what's coming through with that. Let's move on to 2004. Okay, so we got roughly about 4 years left to go through here. I'm slowly running out of time. This might end up being like a 2-hour video, but I think it kind of needs to be. So, because there's a lot of information coming through, a lot of rants coming through, a lot of stuff coming through. So hopefully everyone finds this informative and good. All right, so here we are. Pluto has obviously moved on a bit in Sagittarius. We still have Chiron in Capricorn. We have Neptune in Aquarius, but now we have Uranus in Pisces. And this is what I really want to talk about here, because we still have Saturn in Cancer and stuff. Okay, so this Uranus in Pisces, Neptune in Aquarius. Now we're heading to this point where I believe it's now until, I was going to say the end of Gen Z, but it's not really the end of Gen Z, till 2008, which is the end of like this generational aspect of Pluto in Sagittarius. However, a bit of Gen Alpha with Pluto and Capricorn, I believe, is going to be familiar with some of this as well. But we'll get to that when we get to that point, because we'll get there. I don't want to get too ahead of myself in what I'm trying to say. But what I mean by this is, okay, so there's a concept in astrology known as mutual reception. All right, so as we can see here, we have Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, in Uranus' sign of Aquarius. We have Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, in Neptune's sign of Pisces. Okay, these planets are in each other's signs. And this is what a mutual reception is in astrology. So what this is doing, and what I was kind of getting there a minute there before I what I was getting at here was this is emphasizing both of these signs together, almost like as a whole. So this is giving more power to both of these signs together. So before we had this Uranus and Neptune just in Aquarius, which is that Neptune here is still bringing that vibe of Pisces in there, but now this is even stronger. Of course, we have Uranus retrograde here in this chart, and some people that will talk about mutual receptions will say if a planet is retrograde, it kind of is more debilitating, so the mutual reception is maybe not as good as it could be if it was direct, and okay, whatever. Yes, it can be that, okay? It can be that, okay? I'm not denying that it can be that, all right? But that's not always the case. Okay, that's not always the case, depending on the chart, depending on what is going on. I'm saying this from a general way. Yes, in this very chart, that looks like what that is. However, Uranus is going to be direct at a lot of points through this, and it's going to move through these planets are moving through these signs, and we're going to see this mutual reception act out in like different ways. But I want to get to the gist of this, which is it's giving power to both of these signs. Pisces, limitless, no boundaries. Aquarius, uniqueness, individuality, being different, that humanitarian type of energy. There is a boundless energy here to being whatever the fuck you want. This is being anything, manifesting anything, bringing that into reality. Again, this relates to what I said before in terms of whether it's a different sexual orientation or maybe different gender identity or transgender, or you're trans but you're bi, but you're all of these different things, or you're feeling like a non-binary vibe. Maybe you're feeling asexual this time and then all of a sudden you get really sexual towards this, or maybe it's like all of these, whatever these different things are, and there's no judgment to any of that whatsoever, because that is what this energy is trying to show and teach, that anything is in fact possible. Okay, that there's no boundaries, there's a limitlessness to this. And again, that Pluto in Sagittarius is still giving power to that Jupiterian expansion, right? Jupiter is also the traditional ruler of Pisces, so we can give a flavor to what this is. And again, where is Jupiter here now? Where are you, Jupiter? Where the fuck is Jupiter? Where am I? Jupiter's in Libra. Okay, so technically in this chart, we're dealing with aspects of balance. Relationships. Okay, relationships was kind of a key thing coming through here. So again, maybe what I was touching on in terms of sexuality, sexual orientation, that kind of stuff, gender identity, pay attention to that, really coming through for maybe around this time where this chart is being cast for. That's what I'm saying. The chart of this time, okay? There's an expansion of that in these areas, expansion regarding relationships, gender, sex, sexuality, all of that kind of stuff. But of course, it doesn't have to be specifically in those realms. It can be in the other ways as well surrounding that. Okay, maybe different types of relationships, maybe open relationships, right? This energy is conducive to that. I mean, you're dealing with Uranus and Neptune and this Pisces, like anything goes. There's no boundaries here. Yeah, you may want to be with one person, but you might want to, someone hot comes along, you want to have sex with them too. Why not? Right? This energy is conducive to that kind of stuff, right? And that's why we kind of see, especially with social media, and I'm like OnlyFans creators and like all of that kind of stuff, and that, yeah, you might be in a relationship, but then you do like this OnlyFans stuff. Again, we're dealing with an aspect of social media here as well. And this can relate to sex and sexuality in the sense too. At Jupiter in Libra, like I said, aspects of relationships, expanding in those areas, expanding in our beliefs surrounding a lot of that stuff, right? So again, it's like there's no boundaries here. It's like this anything goes type of energy, and there's no judgment to this at all. There's certainly no judgment for me to any of this. Even though you could consider me just the messenger, I'm not judging this at all. In fact, I look at this and I wanted to do this video because I really like Gen Z. The Gen Zs that I have known in my life have been some of the best people that I have ever met. There's a lot of adults in my life that are supposed to be older and more mature that are fucking pricks and fucking assholes and closed-minded fucking idiots. And you know what? I'm not for that, because as someone who is gay and who has grown up in a world learning to realize that all of these confines of the world are just fucking bullshit, and I had to step out of that myself, and yet I still face judgment from all these people that are being entrapped in these areas, this generation is literally like, it's almost like a blessing. It's like, like a breath of fresh air, of realization that they're still gonna love you for who you are no matter what, regardless of, your age, who you are, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, whatever. The energy is conducive to this. Like I said, there is no one size fits all, again, but in general, in a lot of ways, what I'm talking about is the energy of this generation. It really is. It's expansive in that way. And of course, dealing, like I said, with mental health issues and stuff like that too. A lot of, if I was stressed out at work, I used to work in retail. And of course, there's a lot of different age ranges when you work in retail, especially younger generation, because those are like entry-level type jobs. You work at the grocery store or something while you're in high school. And so you get to know like a lot of people because you're working side by side with them, and you get to know a lot of different things. You talk about stuff, you're learning different things about a new generation. And when you're having a bad day and they're asking you and you're actually honest with them about what's going on, they're some of the most supportive people I've ever met in my fucking life. When I've got colleagues that see me stressed and are whatever, and they don't give a flying fuck about me, but yet the 20-year-old that I'm working with gives more shit about me than the actual fucking, what you want to consider a real adult would be. Excuse me, but the 20-year-old is more of a real adult in that situation than the fucking 40-year-old that doesn't give a flying fuck about me at all when I need help or I need whatever. Like there's a lack of compassion or understanding from that person, whereas I got it from someone who was like, I don't know, 12, 15 years younger than me or so, whatever it was at that point in time, right? Like, that's what I mean. And especially with this Pisces energy, that area of compassion for, uniqueness, individuality, unique situations, unique things, that expansion of beliefs, of knowledge, of seeing different perspectives of different things, understanding a lot of this stuff, understanding mental health because they've been there, because they've been forced into a fucking box where they don't fit, where they just don't fucking fit. but there's like such an expansive, I almost want to say explorative energy as well, especially with Sagittarius and Pluto here. That explorer wanting to explore the world, expanding in those new directions. And with this type of Neptune, Uranus, like mutual reception, these two signs going together where it's endless and boundless, uniqueness, all of that stuff, there's such limitless energy here to no boundary type of stuff that it is explorative. It's like, oh, I could do this, I could be this, I could go here, oh, this is happening now, let's go with this, let's go with that. Like, it's seeing multiple different things, and maybe you try this, you don't like it, okay, move on to this one. Oh, I like that a bit better, and then you try something else. Oh, this is even better than that. Or, oh, like, it's all of this type of stuff that's just like coming through. It's so like awakening. It's almost like, I want to say, it's like awakening from the hell, from the restriction that we've lived in for so long. And this generation is really bringing that up and bringing that through in a lot of ways. All right, let's move on to 2005. I don't know if there's too much that's going to change now that I've talked about that mutual reception and the emphasis of that energy. And remember, if you're an Aquarius or a Pisces that is born in this energy, this might be a bit more heightened in your chart, depending, because remember, it's not just about your sun sign. So your sun could be there, but you could have personal planets there. This could be at a certain house in your chart that maybe has a lot of planetary energy, or there could be some other aspects and stuff going on. Like, this could be a whole bunch of different things where this could be more emphasized for you than it maybe would be for other people. But you say, yeah, those other people still carry a part of this in terms of that generational aspect of the astrology here. If you get where I'm going with this, right? So 2005 now, and so Saturn in Leo, there's a restriction of maybe an expression of self. So maybe there's a lesson here that needs to be learned in terms of your self-expression and, of course, of unconditional love, which is interesting that now we're in this mutual reception that I talked about. You maybe feel restricted in terms of your self-expression, but that's where you need to expand and grow over time. And, of course, through that, with Leo 2 is unconditional love. Through that expression, expressing that in that way. I'm feeling that idea of unconditional love here, and coming from the heart. The higher expression of Leo is expressing from the heart, is what's coming through. That higher expression of Leo is what's expressing from the heart, and that this could almost be a restriction of that, because in the world at first, when you're young, it's like you have all of this energy, this boundless energy, this limitless energy where anything goes, but you're in a world that's like so restrictive, right? And so you feel restricted in that way as well. I'm now seeing how this generational stuff is now all kind of interrelating together, and I'm kind of seeing now how it relates from the beginning in the mid-90s and how we're flowing up to this point in time now, nearing like the end of these generational aspects and how this is flowing through in this way. Okay, so there's a restriction to this, but that's where you need to expand. And as you grow and as you grow older, you'll begin to expand more and more into this area. And maybe that's also the lesson that you can teach to other people as well, is that idea of unconditional love and that expansion in those areas as well in that way. Right? But it's also with yourself too. You need to learn to love yourself, but it's about expanding in that true expression of that unconditional love, not just towards yourself, but even in general towards these multiple different ways of being in that sense and in that way. All right, let's move on to 2006. I got to hurry up here because I'm approaching the end of this video. I'm going on 2 hours almost, probably recording this. So let's get a move on here. I think I've basically said a lot of already what I wanted to say. 2006, we have Jupiter in Scorpio now, so there's an expansion. Again, there's sex and sexuality that could relate to this mutual reception that exists here, as well as a transformation in terms of the expansion that needs to exist here regarding beliefs, regarding this anything goes type energy, the expansion, that really strong transformation that needs to occur. Of course, 2006 is 2024, so they're about 18 now. So just graduating high school, heading in, so still Saturn in Leo, this aspect of unconditional love, expanding, transforming, and ultimately teaching and learning that lesson kind of in that way as we move forward here in this sense. All right, but there's that, like I said, that expansion of that transformation, especially with Pluto here in Sagittarius, of different directions, moving in different ways. This could, maybe you grew up in a different part of the world, or you shifted in that way too. That can also be Pluto in Sagittarius, or Pluto in the 9th house, where maybe at some point in your life you move to a different part of the world in that sense as well. And of course, it's expanding on that transformation. There could be an aspect of like racism or cultural stuff that's coming through, where you're transforming old outdated beliefs in that way as well, and trying to understand the limitless stuff that kind of comes through this, so that there's any way and multiple ways to be. It's going to be you part of a certain culture that was restrictive in a certain way. Now you're trying to expand that in a different way in that sense, or you immigrated to a different place, or you're a descendant of an immigrant, or you have a different skin color or something in some place, and you're expanding on the limitless possibilities of how things can be in a certain way. But maybe you're of a culture that was limited towards aspects of sex and sexuality, and now you're here to expand that in that way, and expand in terms of this idea of unconditional love and all of these other things. Like, there's so many ways in which this can go. Like, again, that relates to that Uranian and Pisces energy. There's so many ways in which this could fucking go. It's just like, and with that Scorpionic energy, that intensity that exists there to transform and expand in that way. And remember, Scorpio is not bad. Scorpio, the reason why people don't like Scorpio is because they're afraid to face what they need to face. That's what that energy brings up in them. They're afraid to face the skeletons in their own closet, right? But you need to face that in order to transform, to expand, and to, that phoenix rising from the ashes, to be healed and be free again of that baggage, of that negativity that you needed to actually face in the first place, right? We're dealing a lot with like energy healing, Reiki, transformation of negative stuff into positive, and that release that kind of exists with that Scorpionic energy as well. And that could even be like sexual healing in a lot of ways as well, through, positivity and power of sex. And again, going back to sex, you want it to be done with consent. You want it to be done in a positive, high vibrational way. There's nothing wrong with that, regardless of who your partner is, even if it's a one-night stand or whatever. As long as it's consent, as long as you understand, as long as you're loving that person unconditionally for the person that they are. You don't have to be in love with them. You don't have to be whatever. You can do them if they're hot, whatever. It doesn't matter. But as long as you're coming at it from a heart space, from a high vibrational space, and not in an abusive, negative space, or being like, you got to suck my dick to get a job or something like that. You don't want to do that. Okay, that's manipulative and abusive. When it's coming from the negative perspective, that's bad. That leads to sexual trauma. That's not something that you want to do. You want to come at this from a higher vibration and a higher perspective. That's positive expressions of sex and sexuality, even if it is with multiple partners, open relationships, one-night stands, all of that. As long as it's done in a positive way and not used to abuse, manipulate, or any of that negative stuff, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's part of also what this energy could be as well, in terms of what is actually truly coming through here in this sense and in this way. All right. Okay, let's move on to 2007 before I get... Sorry, I'm reaching the end of the video here. I gotta get going. All right, so now we're having Jupiter in Sagittarius and moving into this conjunction with Pluto. So again, this is expanding even more on this strong generational aspect right at the end of this generation, before Pluto's going to move into Capricorn, right at the end there, when you're going to have Jupiter in its own sign, expanding on this even stronger with this mutual reception coming through. Expansion. Saturn is now in Virgo. There could be a restriction of practicality, a restriction of certain things in that way. I'm trying to get into the vibe here. Sorry, I'm like rushing to the end of the video. A restriction of maybe what's deemed... I'm getting aspects of like perfectionism and stuff coming through here. Do we got Saturn building in opposition to Uranus? Yeah. So there could be like a breaking... somewhere around ideals of perfectionism, and maybe a breaking through of what that is. Maybe you're restricted by these ideals of perfectionism, or there's a restriction of... What am I trying to get at? A restriction of practicality. Something to do with practicality, perfectionism, and the idea of this changing it up with this Uranian maybe type of energy that's coming through. I don't know. I'm not really feeling to tap into that. Come on, is there anything to say about this? Getting something about work, restriction of work. Maybe restriction of work, but maybe, I don't know. There's something about that, something surrounding aspects of change, and that something is strongly coming through, maybe related to maybe a humanitarian effort or something like that, regarding stress work. I don't know, but there's some like karmic balance, a restriction that exists here. I don't know. The vibe of that for some reason isn't really strongly coming through. So I think I'm just going to skip through this for a moment. If we want to touch on this later aspect, I'm feeling like this isn't, what is it? This isn't something. This isn't, I'm trying to articulate here. It's not what I'm here to talk about, maybe, in the context of this video. All right. We're here to talk about more of the outer, not necessarily just this. I don't know. Anyways, I can touch on this again in another video if I feel more of this coming through. Maybe I'll put it in the comments more about what this actually means in a way. Okay, I'm maybe getting a bit more in terms of like practicality. Maybe there's a restriction of practicality, but it's surrounding aspects of this, and maybe where you need to expand in terms of what is practical in terms of this limitless type of energy. Okay, all right. All right, I'm just going to touch it. I think that's the idea. That's what's coming through here. I'm hearing practicality in terms of like the limitlessness of this, and the restriction through that. And of course that can also relate to work. They're guiding me back to the practicality thing, not so much the work thing, the practicality thing. Okay. There's an aspect of practicality, a restriction of practicality in that sense, but it's meant to be destabilized. It's meant to be changed in some way. There's has some aspect surrounding these Virgo and themes of like that practicality, detail stuff. I'm just hearing around practicality. There's something around that needs to be shifted and changed somehow in that way with that. Sorry, I haven't actually done any like chart readings on anyone that's been this young, I guess. So this is what kind of what's coming through for me, and in a general way, in the sense, I guess, pay attention to that. This isn't in my repertoire, okay? So this, whatever's coming through with that is what's coming through in this sense. Now we're heading into maybe a bit of a new realm, even for me as an astrologer, in terms of what I'm looking at here. Because remember, when I do this, I just kind of go and dive right in, and just kind of get what's coming to me. I have experience with other certain things, with maybe like older or like mid-aged, not middle-aged, but like in the early 2000s-ish, like Gen Z, not maybe this amount of young. I guess this amount of young. What the fuck am I saying? This isn't very practical, guys. Maybe that's a part of what they're getting at here, practicality. I don't know. All right, let's move on to 2008, where we're seeing the end of this now. So Pluto at 29 degrees of Aquarius, Saturn still in Virgo. Let's see, anything else I want to touch on here? Where's Jupiter at now? Jupiter back in Capricorn. So now we've kind of almost like come full circle in a way. We're at the end here. Now Jupiter is in Capricorn when Pluto's about to enter into Capricorn, right? So there's kind of maybe that expansion of that. I'm feeling this might be different though, because we're heading into Gen Alpha, where there's going to be this Pluto and Capricorn. It's almost like a rebuilding. It's like an expansion of maybe a new foundation. So before, it was like expansion of maybe the old thing that needed to be transformed, but now it's like an expansion of a new foundation. Again, this is territory that even I haven't really bothered to touch in on that much. I'm just going to be brutally honest with you. Coming into this, but again, there's still this mutual reception here. So this mutual reception is overlaid now between young Gen Z and what will be, elder Gen Alpha coming into this. And yeah, we're heading into like, I'm feeling like a different type of energy. Gen Alpha feels, I don't know, it feels like futuristic. I feel like they're going to be in a much different world than even what Gen Z has grown up into. But I don't know exactly in what way that I'm kind of feeling that, but there's a transformation of like this foundational stuff. Okay, maybe that's what's coming through, that transformation of that foundational stuff with that Pluto and Capricorn transformation, destruction of that old world stuff, whereas they have more of a power of a new foundation, especially with this Neptune, Uranus, and what their previous generation, Gen Z, has ushered in and done to bring it into that space and that state. I'm being drawn to the sense of practicality again in this opposition to Uranus, and that changing that up as well as Saturn rules Capricorn, and there's just this earthly kind of shake up, and I'm feeling that's where I'm getting like this futuristic new age type of thing with this Uranus and Pisces type of energy, this limitless expansion of uniqueness and that type of stuff, and especially regarding this mutual reception and how that will shift into there. Okay, that's more of maybe on like at the edge of Gen Alpha as we're coming into this. However, this end of Gen Z with Pluto still in Sagittarius, now here it's like expanding upon that new foundation and then handing the torch off to the next generation. The torch here being Pluto. All right, but they still, like I said, younger Gen Z and what will be elder Gen Alpha are sharing this generational aspect of this mutual reception, Uranus, Neptune, Pisces, Aquarius type of stuff in this changing into a new world. However, I feel like that's more foundational now as it's beginning to come through with this Jupiter and Capricorn, Pluto moving into Capricorn eventually, but now at the end of Sagittarius, expanding that transformation, that expansion in that way, almost like starting to lay the foundation, pave that way, like I said, for the next generation to pass the torch onto. Okay, I think we've kind of reached the end of that. So this portion of the video has been an hour in terms of this recording since we last crashed here. So I'm gonna have to do some data recovery and editing and piecing all of this together. Again, if you're on TikTok, I'm sorry, this would have been in 2 parts. If you're on YouTube, this will likely be a 2-hour video. Wow, I've never done anything this long since I attempted live streaming before. All right, anyways, I hope this was informative and helpful to those, who are Gen Z or even who aren't Gen Z, who are older. I'm sorry if I've gotten a bit like controversial or intense at certain times of the video to really push a message across that really needed to come through, or that I felt like was really coming through there in that way regarding unconditional love and expansiveness of things and social media and differences between generations. Okay, and this isn't necessarily a judgment to older generations either. You came into that energy for a specific reason, and you know and understand that as well, but this is about having compassion for a new generation that's doing a newer thing as well, and to have compassion and understanding for those different perspectives of each other and where we all come from in a lot of these ways as well here. All right? Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to me here. I'm going to end it here. If you have any comments at all, leave them obviously below. Let me know what you thought of this video. This is the first time I've ever kind of done something like this. I hope this was good. I hope this was, like I said, informative, help people to maybe understand certain things. And I have Pluto square my Mercury, and I'm Virgo rising, so Mercury is my chart ruler. It's in Leo and in the 11th house. So if some of this seemed shocking or some of this seemed very blunt, straightforward, and like that, I'm sorry, that's my vibe, that's my energy, that's what's kind of meant to come through here and come out of me in this way, because I think maybe there's some people that need to hear it like that. Some people can handle that, some people can't. I apologize if you can't, but I at least hope that you've got something out of this video. Again, thank you so much. If you have made it to this part of the video, as I always say in my weeklies, leave a purple heart in the comments so I know that you're a real one. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.